Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a new ethics interpretation that has been issued by the Professional Ethics Executive Committee, PEEC, related to information system services. This is very important. 73% of accountings today, 2018 top 100 firms, report growth in their technology consulting business in the last year. And so as a result, if you're thinking about it in that respect, when you think about 73%, if a lot of people are offering this technology consulting and we're about to change the ethics behind it, they probably are going to be impacted. So let's take a look and dive on in here. First off, the section is 1295145, which is Information System Services. It was issued in June of 2019, and it's effective January 1, 2021. So we have a pretty good amount of time. However, you can early implement if you would like. The section used to be very short and used to be named Information System Design, Implementation, and Integration. This is going to take those really basic concepts and really expand on them to be more clear as to what is and is not allowed. We expect this to be issued in the August 2019 Journal of Accountancy, which is the way that PEEC decides to tell us what's changing, right? So once they put it into the Journal of Accountancy, it's deemed to have been communicated to CPAs. So it applies to all attest engagements. So when we think about this, it's not just audits, it's any attest engagement, including those in which the subject matter is not a financial statement. So if it's not a financial statement, you should define a financial information system as any information system subject to the member's attest procedures. So if you're doing a particular examination, for example, and the subject matter is not a financial statement, you have to adjust then obviously the definition of a financial information system to incorporate whatever that subject matter is as part of this. So let's take a look at what is the definition of a financial information system. It is a system that aggregates source data underlying the financial statements or generates information that is significant to either the financial statements or the financial processes as a whole. Right, so that is the definition that they're going to use now of a financial information system. And it tells us a FIS is a tool, includes a tool that calculates results, right? So if you're calculating results, unless, and you have to meet all three. One, the tool performs only discrete calculations. The attest client evaluates and accepts responsibilities for the inputs and assumptions. And the attest client has sufficient information to understand the calculations and the results. If you meet all three of those, then it would not qualify. That tool would not be an FIS. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at this, it's a little bit of a broader definition of an FIS. In order to understand the new rules, we have to have certain definitions. And the first one is designing. So what does it mean to design an information system? It means to determine how a system or transaction will function, process data, and produce results. For example, reports, journal vouchers, and documents such as sales and purchase orders, to provide a blueprint or schematic for the development of software code, programs, and data structures. So design is sort of the first part where we figure out what it's going to look like. And then developing entails creating the software code for individual or multiple modules and testing such code to confirm it functions as designed. So again, these are very important definitions because we're going to use them to decide when we can or cannot perform a particular service. We also have a definition here of COTS, or commercial off the shelf, right? So if you just buy QuickBooks off the shelf and you don't make any modifications to it, that's typically going to be COTS, right? So it's software developed, distributed, maintained, and supported by an entity or entities that are not the member or member's firm, so third-party vendor, sometimes referred to as off-the-shelf package or solution. COTS solutions have generally referred to traditional on-premise software that runs, but also could be third-party cloud infrastructure. So it ranges from software packages that require only installation and are ready to run to large-scale complex enterprise applications. So that's the definition they've given us of COTS. All right, so first off, what are the rules if we are implementing? So if we're designing, developing, or implementing. So design we just discussed. Develop or implemented services described in this interpretation that are not related to an FIS. So something that doesn't qualify to be a financial information system, but we're still doing the design. Threats would be at an acceptable level, provided all of the requirements of non-attest services have been met. So we're going to go back to management having the SKI, they're going to accept responsibility, etc., including that the attest client has not outsourced a function, process, or activity to the member, which would result in the member assuming a management responsibility. So again, if it's not an FIS, it would be okay so long as they are not outsourcing the process, function, or activity to us, right? So long as it's not an FIS, design would be acceptable. All right, so what does it mean to be related, right? So it says not related to an FIS. So what does that mean? So related to an FIS. So to determine whether a non-attest service related to an FIS, members should consider all relevant factors, such as whether the non-attest service will affect systems, controls, or output that will be subject to attest procedures, whether they integrate data that is used to input to the financial statements, including data or information that's either reflected in or used in determining amount or disclosures, a data gathering system such as an analytic or reporting tool that is used in decision making about matters that could significantly affect financial reporting. These are sort of dashboard type items. A system that is part of the attest client's internal controls over financial reporting, including information systems used to effect internal controls over financial reporting. However, information systems used only in connection with controlling the efficiency and effectiveness are unrelated to the financial statement. So it's really focused in on that reporting element. All right, so what if you are related to an FIS, right? So now, if you are going to design or develop, going back to those definitions, it would not be an acceptable level. Threats to independence would not be an acceptable level and could not be an acceptable level, and we would have impaired your independence. Now that's pretty similar to what we had in the past. The old wording would have generally said this very similar items here. It said assisting in setting up the chart of accounts of the financial statements, design, develop, install, or integrate an information system. So they would have these various items here. So if it would be, things that were not allowed were designing or developing an attest client's financial information system. So that was sort of already in there, so design or develop. And then they sort of differentiated between the financial information and the non-financial information as being acceptable. So we didn't stray too much in the design or develop. That one we're pretty consistent with. It's implementation that has been really interesting. So implementation services are activities related to an attest client's information system after design and development. That includes installing, configuring, interfacing, customizing, and data translation. And we're going to actually piece out each of these differently. And that's really what's different about this. So in the past, they only really had a few buckets. We're going to break those buckets out in even more detail to be explicit about what it is or is not permitted. So implementation ceases when the system is available on a regular basis. So things that are post-implementation, maintenance, support, and monitoring are not implementation. So we're going to go through each one of these and decide what is the acceptable item. So for certain implementation services, it would be okay. However, in other scenarios, it would not be acceptable. So you have to do it on a case-by-case type of implementation item. So let's start off with installing. So to install a COTS FIS software solution means the initial loading of software on the client's designated hosting site. That includes software configuration, integration, and conversion activities follow installation. So when we're looking at installing, we're basically, if we used to do this with CD-ROMs, right, we did put the CD-ROM in, and that would be how we installed it. Now we don't have CD-ROMs even on our laptops anymore. But the concept here is you're putting it onto their hosted site. You're not configuring it, you're not integrating it, you're not converting it, right? You're just loading it, right? That's the only thing you do in installing. That would be acceptable, right? So that would be at an acceptable level, provided all requirements of non-attest services are met. So again, going back to management SKI, taking responsibility, etc. Now, this was consistent with other wording, but again, it wasn't as clear because it told us that it would be at an acceptable level if we install or integrate was the language that they used, something that we didn't design or develop. And so they used the example of an off-the-shelf accounting package. And we also talked about, that was what was in there before. So generally the same concept, but a little bit more specific. The next one is configuring. So to configure, you mean to input client selected features. That's very important. Functionality, options, and settings within the third-party vendor software, which determines how the software will perform, right? So they have to be client selected. Configuration may also include selecting predefined formats of certain data attributes. So if the client were to design or develop new code or modify that, then that would not be configuring. That would be designing or developing, which we already said is not permitted. So here, configuring, if it's client selected, then that's typically going to be okay. And that's pretty consistent with what we talk about today. Again, not as explicit. Now, the next option is to customize a COTS FIS. So if we are customizing a COTS FIS, that means modifying or enhancing, altering or adding particular features or functions. So that would include altering the software solution code or developing new code. In that scenario, threats would not be at an acceptable level. And in the past, it said making other than insignificant modifications to source code. So a little bit different here in terms of that interpretation. Then the next part would be interfacing, and this is designing and developing code that passes from one system to the other to connect two or more systems. All right, so the goal here is to take it and to interface between this one and this one. It could be one directional or it could be bidirectional, and it involves the performance of an end-to-end transaction, and the data may pass between them. Then that would not be at an acceptable level and could not be even if you tried to apply safeguards. Very similar to what we had before, which was integrating is the language that they used, install or integrate. So in that scenario, interfacing is going to be the new term that they're going to use here. There is an exception if you're using an API, so an application program interface to do this, then it would be an acceptable level, again, assuming that we have all the other requirements for non-attest services being met. The last piece here is data translation. This is designing or developing the rules or logic. Again, this would not be at an acceptable level. However, if you're using an API, then it would be, assuming again, all those non-audit service requirements are met. So we've kind of walked through design and develop. We've talked about implementing. Now, what happens in that post-implementation phase? So this is the maintenance, support, and monitoring. And basically here, once you have implemented, they come after. And if post-implementation services require or involve the test client outsourcing an ongoing function, process, or activity, then that would not be at an acceptable level. So operating the network, supervising client personnel, having responsibility for maintaining or monitoring the attest client's network performance, operating or managing the attest client's information technology help desk, having responsibility for performing ongoing network maintenance, or maintaining security of this network and system. So that would not be at an acceptable level. Similar to what we had before, it used to say supervising a test client in the daily operations or operating. We're a lot more specific in this scenario. And then on the other hand, if it's not going to be ongoing, if it's separate, distinct, and not ongoing, then independence would not be impaired. So this would be applying virus protection or analyzing a network and providing observations, applying a patch or update that the member did not design or develop, providing advice, training, or instruction, assessing the design or operating effectiveness of the attest client security over information technology systems, or assessing the attest client's information technology security policies. So very similar again to what we would have permitted in the past, which was providing training and instruction or performing maintenance such as virus routine updates and configuring. We just were a little bit clearer than in the past. So we took implementation and we broke it out into minute pieces, and then we clarified those ongoing type items. So again, not effective quite yet, but definitely something that we want to be paying attention to, because this is going to change how we might bid out certain projects going forward if an entity is looking to do some IT consulting. So we wanted to make you aware as this has just been issued, but again, it's effective in the future. So thank you so much for joining me on the Genuine Learning blog. I hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.